Hello, my name is Akram Burton. I'm the Executive Director for the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. We're here today in the Brown-Forman Great Hall, and I'm going to take you on a tour of some of the exhibitions that we have up. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a little bit of history about this building or about this campus. The campus comprises of 4 buildings. We're now in, as I said, the Great Hall, the Brown-Forman Great Hall, and then behind us we have the lecture gallery and the pavilion lobby. Then we have Building B and Building C, and I'll take you on a tour of those areas as we go. The history of this building, that it used to be an old trolley barn here in Louisville. It did and serviced most of the trolleys that were out on the road. And then after a period of time, it turned into heavy machinery. And then the building or campus, or the buildings on the campus, became in disrepair. And then in the mid-90s, there was a proposal to actually look at developing this into the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. Where the campus is located in historic Russell community. This is where many of the African American movers and shakers of the 19th and 20th century lived. I just mentioned a few. Albert E. Musique, who was actually responsible for the development of the West End Library, the only and the oldest Black library located in the United States. And when I say Black library, you have to understand during the time of its development, Black people were not allowed to enter libraries. So we developed our own library, and the West End Library is a very famous library. So that's just some history. There are also other key areas or key things that I want to discuss, but as we go by, I will talk about that. But right now, I'm going to take you on a tour. First, I'm going to take you over to And They're Off, which is a exhibit about Black jockeys. So let's go and see that. So you have the And They're Off, which is an exhibit about Black jockeys. And just directly behind me, you'll see the list of jockeys, Black jockeys that were very dominant in the Kentucky Derby. You have Oliver Lewis, William Billy Walker, Isaac Murphy, Alonzo Lonnie Clayton, James Soup Perkins, Willie Sims, Jimmy Wingfield, Wallace Hicks, and Jimmy Lee. And of course, one of the most celebrated Black jockeys was Isaac Murphy. He won the Kentucky Derby 3 times. This exhibit basically talks about the struggles that the Black jockeys went through and the racism that they experienced. And many of them became successful jockeys overseas because after a period of time, it was very difficult for them to keep or to stay in the horse racing in the United States because of the racism. So what I'll do is take you in and let you see some of the images and pictures. And then from here, I'll take you over and we'll see 2 centuries of Black Louisville. Okay, so this exhibit was developed by the Kentucky Derby Museum and was given to us, and we've had it in storage for quite some time. And we decided that we wanted to bring this out and exhibit. So these are large panels. We've had quite a few schools come in. Quite a few people really love the exhibit. So we plan to have it up until the end of December of 2016. And we'll periodically bring it out at times to exhibit, especially during Derby. But behind us, you'll see pictures of Frederick Douglass. He was a very prominent African-American orator and very much involved in the anti-slavery movement. Also traveled extensively throughout Europe. And so we exhibit him here just to kind of talk about him as an icon during the Jim Crow era. Because again, I was explaining to you that many of the jockeys had to leave the country because of the racism that they experienced. And then you see pictures here of the various jockeys that we talked about earlier, and along with other jockeys. It talked about the migration. This exhibit also talks about the migration of jockeys from various parts of the world to come in and to participate in this event. You know, of course, everybody knows there's a lot of money connected with Derby. Derby, I understand, makes more money than Christmas. So this is just one example of the exhibition. We have more images outside, so I'll take you out there and we'll look at that. Okay, well, we're in front of panels about Jimmy Wingfield. Jimmy Wingfield was a very successful jockey overseas. He ran races in Russia, France, and Poland. So this section of the exhibition talks about his success and what he went through and how he was basically treated when he was in France. He was treated as if he was a king. And this is typical of many of African Americans that went overseas. They were probably received better overseas than they were in their own place of birth. So Jimmy Wingfield is a very, very important figure in horse racing. And I understand that his daughter is still, or his granddaughter, I'm not quite sure, I think it's his daughter, is still living and has given a number of interviews and oral histories, which we are going to try to link up with and embellish this exhibition in the future. Okay, so now we're going to walk over to the exhibit entitled 2 Centuries of Black Louisville. As we're walking over, I'll give you a basic overview. 2 Centuries of Black Louisville actually was a project that was developed by Ken Clay, Merv Osmondson, and J. Blaine Hudson. These images were actually in the Courier-Journal archives as well as in the U of L archives. And so what we did is we put an exhibition was put together and with the generous support of Christy Brown, we were able to have them framed and now is part of our permanent collection. The book of 2 Centuries Black Louisville is in every school library in Louisville, public as well as parochial school library. And this exhibit is very well received. And I'll take you in, you'll take a look at some of the pictures. We're in the exhibit of two Centuries of Black Louisville. And what I really like about this exhibit is that it really shows the pride and On one hand, if you look at the pictures on this side, you see the pride that existed in the African American community here in Louisville. The various events and celebrations and what have you. Sports teams. It was a very vibrant community. Families. On this side, you see more of about what we had to do in order to struggle against inequality and discrimination. We have a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King along with his brother. You have the protests of the Blue Boar downtown Louisville, which we have a historic marker placed there. A number of different key moments in the history of Black Louisville. The inauguration of Chief White, the first Black police commissioner here in Louisville. So it's a very comprehensive exhibit. This is just a represented number of images that are included in the book, 2 Centuries of Black Louisville. And I really would encourage anyone to get a copy of that book, buy a copy of that book. And as I said, this book is in every school library, both public and parochial libraries. And it's very well received and is being used a lot in the curriculum. It's an added resource that's much needed in the schools. So at this point, I'm going to take you over and we're going to look at the exhibit of Great Black Kentuckians, developed by the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. Okay, so here in the South Gallery, we have Great Black Kentuckians. And you can see we have a number of very key individuals that have very significant in the history of Black Kentucky. We have people like Muhammad Ali. We have people like Colonel Charles Young. We have a number of people, Monetta Sleet, who was a very well-known photographer, famous photographer nationally. There are a number of key people. I mentioned earlier about Albert E. Mezik. We have Ed Hamilton, and the list goes on. And they continually add to this. The most recent addition to Great Black Kentuckians was Dr. J. Blaine Hudson, who passed away. He was a former dean for arts and sciences at the University of Louisville, and a very well respected historian, was very instrumental in helping to develop the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. So this is the Rotunda area. And we're going to be developing this into an area where we'll have a stellar experience, if you will, because our brand is many rivers to cross, and much of that is connected with the Underground Railroad. And many people who traveled on the Underground Railroad years ago depended on astronomy and the alignment of the stars in order to find their direction. When we talk about the North Star and the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, these are all things that were taught and ways in which to guide them when they were traveling at night, because in daytime they had to lay low. It was only at night that they were able to move around, and much of that was they were dependent on the stars, the alignment of the stars. We also, above this, is the what we're going to have is the genealogy center, where people can come in and do genealogical research. And we're very excited about that. We're in the process now of acquiring the furniture and the equipment so that we can get started in that area. So those are things to really look forward to. We're developing exhibitions to address many of the historical moments that African Americans have experienced. For instance, we're going to develop an exhibition around the transatlantic slave trade. We're also going to look at, slavery in Kentucky, and then of course the Underground Railroad. And we are working right now to develop an exhibition on civil rights in Kentucky. Kentucky is what we would refer to as a river city, and so it was a connector between the North and the South. And there's some very rich history here as it relates to resistance to slavery. And so we're very excited to, really begin to open that up to the public, because that's information that has really not been out there for the general public. So look forward to that. Here in the Great Hall is where we have many of our events. We rent our facilities out to a number of organizations and individuals for weddings and birthday parties, celebrations of all types. We have bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, and sometimes you can come in here and the event planners just totally transform the place, and you don't even realize that it's the same place. So we've had Prince Charles here, we've had the First Lady here, we've had former President Clinton here. This has been a really important place of attraction here in West Louisville, and we're really proud to be able to bring positive images to West Louisville. And we're also working very hard to become an economic engine for the community. So really encourage you to visit the facility. Got a lot of great things planned, and hope that you do plan to come to the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. Okay, so we're here in the courtyard at the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage, and as I said before, we have many buildings on this campus. So over here is what we refer to as the connector. The connector actually was not here originally, and basically they erected this, and it connects all of the other buildings. So for instance, the connector, and then above you have all of them where the administrative offices for Kentucky Center for African American Heritage is located. And then over here to the left, we have Building D, which is offline right now, but we're in the process of developing it into a multimedia production facility where we can possibly do virtual reality, and as well as other kinds of filmmaking and video making and radio and theater and you name it. And then over here behind me, we have this long building here is Building B. And we have a number of different ideas right now. We're still working on them. But one of the things we want to do is to make this into kind of a music venue. But eventually, I think it may turn out to be a research space, because one of the things that we really need to do is to provide space for people to come in and do research on African American history and heritage. And then over here, we have building, what we used to call Building C, but now it's called the Samuel Plato Academy, which has been dedicated to learning how to do historic preservation of homes. And it's a training facility. It has state-of-the-art equipment. We've already had one cohort that is going through from JCTC, has graduated. And when they graduate, they get a certificate, certification in historic home building and construction. So we're in the pavilion lobby, which is part of the connector that I was talking about. And we have a number of events in the pavilion lobby, and actually we're set up for an event tomorrow. We're gonna actually have Angela Davis here. We're gonna have a breakfast for Angela Davis. So we've set up already for that event tomorrow. But also I wanted to just point out, you'll see that there's a number of pictures here highlighting key people that have contributed to the history of Kentucky African Americans. For instance, you have Ed Hamilton, Muhammad Ali, also highlighting the Ann Braden Center. You have a picture at the top here that pretty much shows the people standing out front of the Carl Braden Memorial Center. But I think one of the key things or cornerstones of the Kentucky Center of African American Heritage is the story about Mary Cunningham Smith. And many people have heard of Rosa Parks, but not that many people have heard about Mary Cunningham Smith. Mary Cunningham Smith is particularly important here in Louisville, Kentucky, because in 1879, 4 years after the abolition of slavery, her and her stepson tried to enter a donkey-drawn trolley, to board a donkey-drawn trolley on 8th and Broadway. And she was thrown off because she refused to get up out of her seat for a white person. She then went home and her husband filed suit. And the case went all the way to Kentucky Supreme Court and also to federal court. And they won in 1873. In this case, we know at the time she did pretty much the same thing that Rosa Parks did, which was to challenge the discriminatory laws of the transportation company at that time. And there were many other challenges that went on, the interstate transportation as well. And we do know that this was a concerted effort by the community to really challenge these laws until these laws were abolished. So Mary Cunningham Smith, Mary Victoria Cunningham Smith, is our Rosa Parks. Okay, so over here in the lobby, I wanted to point out our logo. As you can notice, the logo is made up of 4 outlines of the map of the state of Kentucky, which forms kind of a silhouette, if you will, of what we refer to as the griot. All right, griot is a term that is used in Africa to pretty much describe a storyteller, an older person that has all of the stories of the village, of the city, of the people. And that's what we feel that we do, is that we are telling the story of, African and African American people. And then in the middle of the silhouette, you see lines and dots and what have you. And that basically is referring to many rivers to cross, all right? And the trials and tribulations that we've gone through. So I just wanted to point out our logo here. But this is basically what the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage is. And really welcome you to come visit. We got a lot of great things in store here, and hope that you will come down and enjoy the various exhibitions that we have. Please don't hesitate to contact us at 502-583-4100, or you can go to our website, www.kcaah.org. And again, thank you.